The laughter started before the blade was even unsheathed. It rolled through the galactic assembly like distant thunder, distorted by translation fields, layered in different frequencies of mockery. On the central anti-gravity platform, suspended beneath white inspection light, rested the object of amusement. A sword. No energy core. No quantum emitter. No gravity manipulator. Carbon steel. Folded. Balanced. Silent. A relic. The holo-display rotated it slowly for the gathered species, plasma-forged empires, cybernetic warlords, hive collectives that had conquered entire star clusters. A blade from Earth. Primitive metallurgy, one crystalline delegate chimed. Pre-fusion era, added a mantis-shaped strategist. Decorative, a reptilian general concluded flatly. Ceremonial at best. The Galactic Military Evaluation Summit had seen singularity cannons capable of collapsing moons. Nanite plagues that rewrote biology in seconds. Living weapons grown from star matter. And now, Earth had submitted a sword. The human ambassador stood quietly at the edge of the chamber. No visible irritation. No apology. "Is this a mistake?" someone asked. "No," the ambassador replied calmly. "It is a demonstration." The chamber doors slid open. Several delegates expected armored soldiers. Instead, soft footsteps. An 11-year-old girl walked in. Small frame. Dark training uniform. Black belt tied neatly at her waist. Her hair was tied back in a simple ponytail. Her expression was calm. Too calm. Her name, displayed briefly above her in diplomatic script. Aiko Tanaka, Earth representative. A ripple of disbelief spread through the chamber. "A child?" one ambassador hissed. "Humans insult this council," another growled. Aiko stopped before the floating platform. She bowed. The laughter returned, louder this time. The reptilian general leaned forward. "Does she understand this is a weapons evaluation?" The human ambassador nodded once. "She requested to be here." Aiko stepped onto the platform. Up close, the blade looked even simpler. Wrapped handle. Curved steel. Plain lacquered sheath. No enhancements. No tricks. Just weight and edge. She placed one hand gently on the hilt. The war chamber lights dimmed as the combat arena barrier activated around her, an invisible spherical shield rated to withstand orbital bombardment. Opposite her, a hatch opened. A military-grade autonomous combat drone floated out. Sleek. Black alloy. Multi-axis propulsion. Adaptive shield matrix. Designed to neutralize threats faster than biological neurons could fire. It scanned her. Threat assessment, minimal. Age, juvenile. Weapon, obsolete. "Begin demonstration," the High Arbiter announced. The drone did not hesitate. A beam of compressed plasma screamed across the chamber. Gasps erupted from the diplomatic balconies. But the beam struck nothing. Aiko had moved. Not fast. Not flashy. Just, gone. The plasma carved molten glass across the arena floor where she had been standing half a heartbeat earlier. She did not rush the drone. She did not shout. She inhaled slowly. Exhaled. Her thumb nudged the guard of the sword. A soft metallic click echoed through the silent chamber. Steel leaving sheath. The sound was quiet. But something about it made several veteran war commanders lean forward instinctively. The drone recalibrated and accelerated, breaking sound barrier inside the contained field. Observers switched to high-speed tracking. Even magnified, they struggled to follow her footwork. No wasted motion. No panic. The drone lunged from her blind side. Its targeting solution predicted 0.003 seconds to impact. The blade moved. One clean horizontal arc. No dramatic flourish. No overextension. Just alignment. For a split second, nothing happened. The drone hovered. Then a thin red line appeared across its chassis. Its propulsion systems failed. The upper half slid off the lower half. Two perfect pieces struck the arena floor. Silence. Complete silence. Emergency diagnostic lights flickered over the debris. Combat analysis systems replayed the footage in ultra-slow resolution. Frame by frame. The blade had entered precisely between shield oscillation intervals, an impossibility calculated at 1 in 9.7 billion. Not brute force. Timing. Aiko stood still. The sword rested at her side. She gently resheathed it. Click. She bowed again. The chamber remained frozen. One ambassador finally spoke, voice thinner now. "That was statistical anomaly." The High Arbiter gestured sharply. Deploy 5 units. Hatches opened. 5 drones emerged this time, military swarm class. The chamber lights dimmed further. Several alien generals leaned forward, eager to watch the human child fail. Aiko adjusted her stance. Not aggressive. Not defensive. Balanced. The drones attacked from every angle simultaneously. Plasma flared. Shields crackled. Observers prepared to witness a lesson in human overconfidence. Instead, steel flashed once. Twice. 3 times. Movements so small they looked almost gentle. The drones fell in pieces before the echoes of their own propulsion faded. Not destroyed violently. Disassembled. Precise. Controlled. Aiko lowered the blade. The hum of the shield barrier faded. Smoke curled faintly from severed drone hulls. She looked up at the council. Her voice was soft, but it carried through every translator node in the chamber. You studied the blade, she said. But you never studied why we kept it. No one laughed this time. And somewhere in the upper diplomatic ring, for the first time, a few species began recalculating their assumptions about humanity. The silence after the 5th drone fell was heavier than the laughter had been. No one applauded. No one spoke. Across the chamber, tactical analysts were already dissecting the footage, running probability simulations, replaying frame-by-frame breakdowns of the blade's movement. Every model returned the same conclusion. The shield had not failed. It had been bypassed. The High Arbiter's voice cut through the quiet. Deploy adaptive swarm tier. A murmur spread instantly. Swarm tier units were not evaluation toys. They learned mid-combat. They rewrote their own threat matrices. 5 hatches opened again. But this time, what emerged did not hold formation. 10 drones lifted into the air, sleeker, faster, their hulls layered in reactive plating. Blue light rippled across their surfaces as shield matrices activated in staggered frequencies specifically designed to prevent timing exploitation. They did not attack immediately. They studied her. Aiko stood in the center of the arena. Still breathing evenly. Still holding the sword at her side. The reptilian general leaned toward his console. Adjust shield oscillation to randomized pattern. Remove interval predictability. Done. Activate velocity unpredictability. Done. Begin. The drones vanished. Not cloaked, just moving too fast for unaided vision. Even enhanced observers had to switch to combat overlay feeds. The first strike came from above. The second from behind. The third from ground level. Simultaneous. The arena lit up with crossing plasma trails. For a split second, Aiko disappeared inside the explosion of light. Gasps erupted in the gallery. When the smoke cleared, she was still standing. 1 foot had shifted 6 centimeters. That was all. The drones recalculated. Target survival anomaly detected. They increased velocity. The chamber's observation systems struggled to keep pace now. To the naked eye, it looked chaotic. But when the tactical analysts slowed the feed, they saw something that unsettled them far more than speed. Her movements were minimal. No wasted energy. No frantic dodging. Every step placed exactly where an attack would not be. She was not reacting. She was predicting. The first drone lunged from her left flank at hypersonic speed. The blade moved vertically this time. A precise upward draw. The drone split along its central axis, momentum carrying its halves past her shoulders. She did not turn to watch them fall. A second unit approached from her blind spot, its shield frequency altered mid-approach to avoid prior entry timing. Aiko shifted her grip slightly. She did not aim for the shield. She aimed for the propulsion vector. The blade tapped the drone's undercarriage, barely a strike. The propulsion field destabilized instantly. The unit spiraled into another incoming drone. Both crashed. Observers leaned forward. She isn't overpowering them, one strategist whispered. She's redirecting them. The remaining units adapted again. They spread out, attacking in staggered rhythm to disrupt pattern recognition. To an untrained eye, it looked overwhelming. To Aiko, it looked slow. Her footwork tightened. Short pivots. Controlled rotations. She moved like water adjusting around stones. 1 horizontal cut. 1 diagonal draw. 1 thrust placed precisely between 2 overlapping shield pulses. 3 more drones fell. 4 remained. They shifted strategy. No longer attempting immediate elimination, they began pressuring her, forcing movement, testing stamina, testing endurance. Minutes passed. No visible fatigue. No heavy breathing. No aggression. Just steady discipline. The High Arbiter's Secondary Council began whispering urgently. Escalate further. Authorize lethal setting. Denied, the Arbiter replied. We are observing. The drones launched a synchronized convergence strike. All four attacked from cardinal directions at once. Impossible geometry. Zero safe space. Aiko inhaled. For the first time, she stepped forward instead of away. Into the center of the convergence. Her blade traced a small circular arc. Not wide. Not dramatic. Just enough. All four drones froze midair. A thin line appeared across each chassis, perfectly aligned. They fell simultaneously. The arena went dark as combat systems shut down. 10 adaptive swarm drones. Neutralized. Total time elapsed, 3 minutes, 17 seconds. Energy expenditure from subject, negligible. The silence returned. But this time it wasn't disbelief. It was calculation. The reptilian general broke it first. This is reflex enhancement. The human ambassador shook his head. No augmentation. Genetic modification. No. Cybernetic assistance. No. Then how? Aiko sheathed the blade again. Click. She looked up at the elevated council seats. You build weapons to compensate for weakness, she said quietly. We train so we don't have to. A crystalline delegate projected combat data midair. Your strikes exploit microfluctuations in shield harmonics. That requires computational processing beyond organic capacity. Aiko tilted her head slightly. We call it practice. The chamber's AI systems ran the numbers again. To replicate her performance artificially would require predictive modeling at near precognitive speeds, motor control precision at sub-millimeter accuracy, emotional suppression under lethal pressure. In other words, a biological weapon refined by culture, not machinery. The High Arbiter leaned forward slowly. This sword, he said, is not the threat. Aiko met his gaze. No. The Arbiter's voice dropped half a register. The threat is that you can do this without technology. Aiko bowed slightly. The drone's remains were cleared from the arena floor. But the damage wasn't to the machines. It was to the galaxy's assumptions. They had believed human strength came from ships. From weapons. From industrial capacity. Now they were staring at something far older. A training philosophy refined over centuries. A discipline passed from generation to generation. A weapon that required the wielder to become worthy of it. And if their children trained like this, what did their soldiers look like? The High Arbiter issued a final directive. Prepare living opponent evaluation. A murmur of alarm rippled through the diplomatic tiers. Aiko remained still. Calm. Balanced. Unshaken. The galaxy had just learned something. And they weren't sure they liked it. The word living opponent changed the air inside the chamber. This was no longer a spectacle. It was a statement. Across the upper tiers, diplomatic advisors began transmitting private warnings. Risk calculations. Political consequences. The High Arbiter remained unmoving. Volunteer? He asked. Silence. Then, a massive figure rose from the war delegation tier. Armor layered over scaled flesh. Nearly 3 meters tall. Musculature augmented by biomechanical reinforcement. A veteran of 12 planetary conquests. General Karvok of the Virex Dominion. His species did not laugh anymore. They evaluated. He stepped forward, each footfall heavy enough to resonate through the observation deck. This demonstration has relied on machines, Karvok said, voice low and controlled. Machines are predictable. He activated the power core in his gauntlet. Gravity distortion rippled faintly around his armored fist. Let us test discipline against instinct. The chamber lights dimmed further as the arena shield recalibrated, now configured for organic combat containment. Aiko stood at the center. Small. Still. Unarmored. Karvok entered the arena. Up close, the size difference was almost absurd. He could crush her skull with one hand. He removed no armor. He deactivated no enhancements. This was not mercy. This was evaluation. The High Arbiter's voice echoed across the chamber. Engagement limited. Non-lethal threshold enforced. Karvok's eyes locked onto Aiko. You may withdraw, he said. She bowed. I'm here to demonstrate. Something flickered in his gaze. Not anger. Curiosity. Begin. He moved first. Faster than his size suggested. The air buckled as his gravitic gauntlet swung downward. Aiko did not block. She stepped inside the arc. The impact cratered the arena floor behind her. Stone fractured outward in a shockwave. Observers gasped. She was already repositioning. Karvok pivoted instantly, adjusting for missed momentum. A second strike, horizontal sweep. Again, she stepped inside it. Too close for his full leverage. The sword remained sheathed. She wasn't attacking. She was studying. Karvok increased speed. His armor compensated, enhancing joint torque beyond biological limits. Now his movements blurred. 3 strikes in rapid succession. Each one lethal if landed. Each one missing by less than a centimeter. The analysts began whispering. She isn't retreating. She's collapsing his reach. Karvok realized it too. She wasn't afraid. She was measuring distance. He triggered a short-range gravity pulse. The air compressed violently around her position. Finally, contact. She staggered half a step. The chamber exhaled collectively. Karvok lunged to capitalize. Steel sang. The blade cleared its sheath in a single fluid motion. Observers leaned forward. Not a wild slash. Not a reckless counter. A single vertical draw, precise, controlled. The sword did not strike his body. It struck the seam of his shoulder armor. A faint metallic chime echoed. Karvok froze. Warning lights flickered across his armor display. Structural integrity compromised. He stepped back instinctively. Aiko did not pursue. She lowered the blade. Karvok examined his shoulder. A thin line traced perfectly along the armor's weakest joint, deep enough to disable the locking mechanism. Not deep enough to wound. He recalibrated. This time, he attacked unpredictably, feints, partial swings, sudden directional shifts. He was no longer testing. He was adapting. Aiko's footwork shifted too. Less reactive now. More assertive. She stepped forward between his strikes. Close enough to see her reflection in his visor. He swung low. She pivoted over it. He brought his gauntlet up in a crushing uppercut. She tapped the inside of his wrist with the flat of her blade. The gauntlet's gravity field destabilized. Momentary malfunction. Karvok's balance shifted. In that half-second, the blade moved again. Not fast. Not violent. Just inevitable. A diagonal cut traced across his chest plate, exactly along the central structural brace. His armor disengaged with a hiss of safety override. Power systems shut down automatically. Silence. Karvok stood motionless. Armor split into 2 symmetrical sections, sliding apart slightly at the seam. Non-lethal. Perfectly measured. He dropped to one knee. Not from injury. From realization. The arena shield flickered off. The chamber was utterly still. Aiko resheathed the blade. Click. Karvok removed his helmet slowly. His eyes, predatory, battle-hardened, studied her not as prey, but as phenomenon. How? He asked quietly. She met his gaze without arrogance. The sword isn't strong, she said. It forces us to be. He frowned slightly. She continued. When we train with something that simple, we can't rely on power. Or shields. Or speed enhancements. She rested her hand lightly on the hilt. If we make a mistake, we feel it. Across the chamber, military observers began connecting implications. If this level of discipline existed at age 11, what did adulthood look like? What did their special forces look like? What did their masters look like? Karvok stood slowly. You held back, he said. Yes. Why? She bowed. Because this was a lesson. The High Arbiter finally spoke. You could have struck his throat. Yes. You chose not to. Yes. Why? Aiko looked up at the council tiers. Because control is the point. The word settled heavier than any weapon demonstration. Not aggression. Not superiority. Control. Karvok turned toward the council. For the record, he said calmly, I was not defeated by speed. He glanced at Aiko once more. I was defeated by discipline. That admission rippled through the chamber more violently than any explosion. The galaxy had feared human fleets. Feared their industry. Feared their expansion rate. Now they were confronting something else. A civilization that trained restraint before power. That refined skill before escalation. That taught children to master themselves before mastering weapons. And that was far more dangerous. The High Arbiter leaned forward, voice measured. One final evaluation remains. The chamber stiffened again. Environmental combat simulation. Full-scale battlefield variables. Aiko stood quietly at the center of the arena. Waiting. Not nervous. Not proud. Just ready. The galaxy was no longer laughing. It was calculating survival. The words environmental combat simulation triggered a ripple of unease through the upper tiers. This was no longer a duel. No longer a controlled exchange. This was battlefield doctrine testing. The High Arbiter spoke carefully. Full-spectrum urban collapse environment. Multi-vector hostility. No weapon restrictions beyond non-lethal threshold. Several delegates objected immediately. She is a child. She has proven the point. But others remained silent. Watching. Calculating. Because if this was not luck, if this was cultural conditioning, they needed to know. The arena dissolved. Hard light projections reshaped the containment sphere into a devastated cityscape. Crumbling towers. Falling debris. Smoke-choked streets. Visibility, 37%. Wind interference, variable. Heat signatures flooded the environment. Hostile units materialized across rooftops and alleyways. 30 swarm-class drones. 10 heavy assault platforms. 4 aerial hunter-killers. This was not a duel. This was war. Aiko stood alone in the center of a broken street. The wind tugged lightly at her uniform. Her sword remained sheathed. Simulation active, the Arbiter announced. The first explosion tore through a building behind her. She didn't flinch. Hostiles advanced from every direction. Plasma fire streaked across the sky. Concrete shattered near her feet. The observers expected panic. Expected retreat. Instead, she moved toward cover before the second explosion hit. Not reacting to the blast. Anticipating it. Analysts began cross-referencing her movement patterns. She wasn't guessing. She was reading trajectory data mid-flight. A drone lunged low across the street. She sidestepped, redirected it with the flat of her blade into a support column. The column collapsed, crushing 2 more drones attempting flanking maneuvers. She hadn't cut them. She had used them. She's weaponizing the terrain, one strategist whispered. Heavy assault platforms advanced, deploying suppression fields. The gravity distortion slowed movement within a 10-meter radius. For the first time, her steps shortened. Observers leaned forward. Finally. A limitation. An aerial hunter descended from above, plasma cannon primed. Aiko glanced upward once. Then she ran toward the gravity field. Directly into it. Gasps erupted. Inside the distortion field, movement should have been nearly impossible. But she adjusted. Shorter strides. Lower center of gravity. Her breathing slowed further. The hunter fired. She pivoted at the last possible microsecond. The plasma beam struck a weakened high-rise behind her. The structure groaned. She sliced one anchor cable holding a nearby suspended transit rail. The rail collapsed sideways, slamming into the heavy assault platform. Chain reaction. 3 hostiles eliminated by structural failure. The gravity field destabilized. She emerged from it fluidly. The swarm drones adapted, forming layered attack waves to box her into an intersection kill zone. From above, analysts confirmed. No escape vectors. Aiko stopped moving. Just for a moment. Not frozen. Centered. She closed her eyes briefly. Then opened them. Instead of trying to break through the formation, she moved directly toward its thinnest pressure point. Not where it looked weakest. Where it was least coordinated. Her blade flashed once. Twice. Not wide arcs. Small, surgical motions. She disabled propulsion units rather than cores. Crippled mobility instead of destroying mass. Drones collided with each other mid-air. Traffic lights, street signs, shattered glass, all became obstacles for the swarm. The aerial hunter recalculated and descended for close-quarters elimination. That was its mistake. She stepped onto a fallen vehicle hood, used the elevation to leap. The blade traced a clean arc along the hunter's wing stabilizer. The craft spiraled into another building. The shockwave disoriented half the remaining swarm. Total elapsed time, 2 minutes. Remaining hostiles, 12. The observers had stopped speaking. They were studying. Because this was not chaos. This was efficiency. She wasn't fighting harder. She was fighting smarter. A heavy platform attempted one final brute force solution, overload detonation. The simulation registered imminent blast radius expansion. Several council members stood instinctively. Even non-lethal thresholds would simulate catastrophic failure. Aiko saw it too. She didn't retreat. She ran toward it. Toward the detonation core. One clean thrust, precise, centered. She struck not the core, but the synchronization relay controlling detonation cascade. The overload collapsed inward instead of outward. Energy dissipated harmlessly into the ground. The platform shut down. The remaining swarm units hesitated. That hesitation lasted less than half a second. She used it. 4 more fell in controlled arcs of steel. The final 8 attempted coordinated retreat and regroup behavior. She didn't chase recklessly. She cut off their angles. Forced them into narrowing corridors of ruined buildings. Reduced space. Reduced options. One by one. They fell. The simulation ended. Silence returned to the chamber. Smoke cleared from the holographic ruins. The city dissolved back into polished arena floor. Aiko stood alone. Breathing steady. No visible fatigue. No wasted motion. Combat time, 3 minutes, 51 seconds. Civilian casualty simulation, 0. Structural collateral damage, minimized. Energy expenditure, negligible. The High Arbiter rose slowly. This was not a demonstration of weapon strength. No, the human ambassador replied quietly. This was a demonstration of training. Aiko sheathed the sword. Click. She looked up at the tiers of alien leaders. You build stronger weapons every cycle, she said softly. We build stronger people. The words echoed in the chamber. Across military networks, a new fear was forming. If this level of adaptability existed at 11, what did their adults look like in real war? What did their commanders look like? What did their entire civilization look like under threat? The High Arbiter spoke again, voice measured. Final session. Policy review. The chamber did not protest this time. Because the galaxy had just learned something unsettling. The sword was never the threat. The doctrine behind it was. And doctrine spread. No one applauded. When the simulation dissolved and the arena lights returned to neutral white, the chamber remained motionless. Not stunned. Not confused. Thinking. The High Arbiter stood slowly. Emergency policy session, he announced. No one objected. That, more than anything, marked the shift. Minutes earlier, this had been entertainment. Now it was strategic recalibration. Aiko stepped down from the arena platform. She did not look proud. She did not look relieved. She simply walked back to stand beside the human ambassador. Her breathing had already normalized. Across the chamber, military analysts transmitted rapid data bursts to their respective empires. Probability matrices. Long-term projections. Engagement forecasts. Every projection returned the same disturbing conclusion. Humanity's greatest weapon was not technological. It was cultural. The Arbiter's voice echoed again. Review findings. A crystalline delegate projected data into the air. Shield exploitation without computation. Predictive modeling via behavioral conditioning. Emotional regulation under lethal pressure. Environmental adaptation exceeding AI response curves. A pause. Then the final line. Subject age, 11 standard cycles. A murmur spread through the chamber. The Virex General Karvok stepped forward, now unarmored. I request the floor. Granted. He turned to face the assembly. I have fought enhanced warriors. Machine hybrid shock troops. Hive predators engineered for slaughter. He gestured toward Aiko. This was different. Silence deepened. She did not overpower me, he continued. She limited me. He scanned the chamber. That is not combat instinct. That is training. The High Arbiter inclined his head. Human ambassador. Clarify. The ambassador spoke evenly. This is not unusual on Earth. A visible ripple moved through the diplomatic tiers. Define not unusual, one war minister demanded. She trains 3 days a week after school, the ambassador replied. A beat. The weight of that sentence landed harder than any strike in the arena. After school. Not military academy. Not elite program. Normal. Aiko spoke then, voice calm but clear. The sword isn't special. Several delegates visibly stiffened at that. It forces us to control ourselves, she continued. If we rely on it to save us, we fail. So we train not to rely on it. The Arbiter narrowed his gaze. Your species develops planetary fleets. Quantum weaponry. Artificial intelligence capable of independent strategy. Yes, the ambassador confirmed. And yet you preserve archaic combat disciplines. Yes. Why? Aiko answered this time. Because if everything else breaks, we're still dangerous. Silence. Total silence. Across the galaxy's military networks, that sentence triggered re-evaluation protocols. Because civilizations that rely entirely on technology can be disarmed. But civilizations that train adaptability cannot. The Arbiter turned to the Council's strategic core. Classification review. Holographic text formed above the chamber. Humanity, current status, emerging industrial power. The text flickered. Rewritten. Humanity, revised status, strategic tier civilization. Subclassification appended. Adaptive persistent species. Additional doctrine recommendations populated beneath. Do not evaluate humans solely by visible armament. Expect asymmetrical adaptation in prolonged conflict. Avoid escalation based on perceived technological advantage. Cultural resilience factor, high. The final line appeared last. Engagement with humanity requires caution beyond standard metrics. The vote passed unanimously. No debate. No dissent. Karvok approached Aiko once the chamber began to settle. You held back, he said quietly. Yes. You could have ended me. Yes. Why? She looked at him directly. Because that wasn't the lesson. He studied her for a long moment. What was? She gestured lightly to the arena floor. You think weapons make civilization strong. A small pause. But discipline does. He nodded slowly. For the first time in decades, the Virex general felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not humiliation. Respect. Across the chamber, final diplomatic records were logged. The High Arbiter delivered the closing statement. Let the record show, humanity's demonstration was not a display of force. He looked toward Aiko. It was a display of control. The arena lights dimmed to diplomatic gold. Session adjourned. Aiko turned to leave with the ambassador. One of the younger delegates, voice hesitant, called out. If this is your child, what are your soldiers like? Aiko paused at the doorway. She didn't smile. She didn't boast. She simply answered. They train longer. And then she walked out. The doors sealed behind her. Inside the chamber, the galaxy updated its threat assessments. Not because of fleets. Not because of weapons. But because somewhere on Earth, children practiced until discipline became instinct. And instinct became survival. Final record entry. The galaxy once feared human technology. Now, it feared what taught humans how to use it.